Actually, you know what? This is an apropos episode. I've had two wake up calls courtesy of Cindy Blackman, and it's just hitting me right now. As I was saying about my experiences in high school, like thinking I was hot shit, and suddenly, uh, you know, real musicians are dusting me. It gave me a wake up call, but then it just hit me that you're responsible for two wake up calls for me. But
He's
I'll
going to
I'll
tell
get
us
into
what
that
they
part
are.
later.
He's not going to tell us.
Nope.
No.
He's a good
Okay.
storyteller.
Number one. All right. Number one.
Great
Do
suspense.
you remember the first time we played together?
Oh, this is
Of course.
Okay. So I always wanted to ask you. So there was this thing. Uh, this was. You know what? This had to be maybe 3 months after 9/11. I remember this being like. So you remember that 2 month, 3 month post 9/11? Are we in the book of Revelations? Is this the apocalypse? Is it, that feeling that we also said in 2020, like, oh, is this the end of the world? But there was a really surreal period after 9/11. New Yorkers were real nice to each other. And hey, how are you making, that sort of thing. It was a very surreal feeling in the air. Someone, I know it was for Fashion Week. Someone had said it might have been, there's two Fashion Weeks in New York, so this might be February of the next year of 2002. But they wanted you and I to just do a one-on-one drum thing at this boutique thing. And I had never, I just said, yeah, sure. I don't, and didn't prepare for it. And I remember we briefly spoke backstage, like, so what are we supposed to do?
Huh?
And they're like,
y'all briefly spoke before you went on, and it was just
yeah.
y'all two.
I mean, like even
This is a
before we
professional
do,
musician.
it's
Wow,
not
I'm sorry. Okay, you're right.
just act like it. That's Questlove Supreme. Like literally, I show up like minutes
true.
before, like, hey, how you doing? Like,
Okay,
that's
true.
kind of. And I was like, so what do we do? And she's like, we just play. And I was like, okay, yeah, I could do that. And man,
Okay, y'all need to talk us through this. Like, I need to.
she went from 0 to Autobahn 200 miles an hour.
I know she did.
Could you not keep up?
What did you do,
What happened?
Amir? What did you do?
She went giant steps. You went baby steps. What the fuck happened?
Do you remember the first time in life, like out of shape, where like you're like you went jogging? You remember the first time like you jogged your first mile?
You want to die?
And it was like it was like some G.I. Jane basic training thing, like
G.I. Jane.
dog. There was
my
a
mind,
second.
you just hit the end, and you got me like, all right, fuck it,
dude. There was a second hand. There was a digital clock that was in the corner, and that was the slowest I ever saw seconds go by. And like 43 seconds went by, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna die. Like I mean, it was the fastest, it was the loudest, fastest thing ever. And that night, I will say, was the night. And that night, yeah, I was 438 at my most weight.
Oh, okay.
And I got back to my hotel. Like I made that gig. I got through that gig by the skin of my teeth.
Mm.
And I remember going back to my hotel and just looking at, it was one of the moments where you look yourself in the mirror and you're just like,
it's not going to work.
I got a change that it wasn't a rock bottom low place, but I definitely remember by like minute 6, I don't know how she does this. Like I've never gone this, like my level of drum solo is like maybe 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, and that's it. But I was like, one, my drumming technique is way under advanced, undercooked. I got to
And
work on that.
are we tripping and seeing that it looks like Cindy gives more of her body too in the as she's drumming, like she just your whole body, all your limbs.
Yeah, I was watching just like, oh wow, she puts her like, which my real question, I had to get in that story. So yes,
Yeah.
that's the night where I said I have to lose weight, and subsequently I lost 200 pounds. But
Oh,
Good
that
job.
was the night where I was just like, oh God, this is a sport. This is not, this is
It's a sport.
athleticism. And I made a lane for myself where you're playing breakbeats and keeping the pocket. Less is more. I'm just using my wrist. She was using her body.
whole body, yeah.
So yeah, that taught me two
Oh yeah,
lessons
Cindy.
about my health and my playing. But I'll ask you, is it, and I often have this when I'm in a situation that I don't musically control. So I'll ask you, is there ever a time where I'm certain, based on people seeing the Lenny videos and your Tony influence or whatnot, are there ever times where like you just don't feel like rocking out with it? Well, I can't use that term.
She got
Air quote, rocking out with your cock out. Like, are there times where it's just like you feel this pressure that you have to go from 0 to 900 miles per hour every show you've ever done in the rest of your life? Like, is there pressure where you just don't feel like doing that?
No, not for me because I love 90 miles an hour. I love
That was a
100
real
miles
answer.
an
Is
hour.
it therapeutic?
I love the velocity of all of that. But, before we get into more of that, I just want to say that when we played together, I was like, man, this dude, I mean, and I heard you on record. I loved your playing, but to play with you, your groove was so intensely beautiful and so in the pocket. I was like, okay, yes,
That's
man.
all I had.
Yeah.
I had a pocket. I didn't have velocity or strength or
Let her talk.
dynamics.
Take these
Still
flowers.
what you
Shut
got.
up. Let her talk.
Still what you got.
Let me tell you something. I loved it. I thought it was awesome. So that was,
You're
you
very
know,
kind. Thank you.
really, no, it's the truth, man. I loved it. I thought it was so great. So it was, for me, it was really, really great to play with you and feel where you're feeling it. It's interesting because I went to see Tony at the Vanguard one time, and you've been to the Vanguard, that
Mhm.
little bench that they have. So that's Drummers Row. So of
Right,
course I
right.
got there early so I could be as close to Tony as possible in Drummers Row.
Right.
So drums are here and I'm right here. So I'm just watching Tony, not paying attention to anything else that's going on in the room because I'm focused on him, of course, as we all would be. And there were people sitting next to me, but I don't know who they are, just somebody. I don't know who it was. There's somebody on my left. And I'm watching him, and all of a sudden there's like a little commotion on my on my left side. I didn't know what it was. Somebody pushed the person out of the way who was sitting next to me and sat down next to me, just plopped down. And I looked, and it's Art Blakey. Who I tell you was already my papa. He sat down next to me and he put his arm around me. And so he's listening, he's watching Tony like I'm watching Tony. And he's patting on my shoulder, where he's feeling the beat. And Tony's playing where he's feeling the beat. And Tony was, like, so you got the middle of the beat, you got behind the beat, you got above the beat, you got all these little areas where you can push, where that center is, and you can push the center. You can be in the center, you can be behind it, and we know the cats that we love kind of where they go.
Right.
So Tony is like, either center or pushing, and so he was pushing, and Art was feeling it back here. So the way to feel, for me to feel Art tapping on my shoulder where he felt
The one was
yes, and where he felt the time and where Tony was playing it was mind-blowing. It was like it was so
I'm always that
incredible.
person.
Yeah.
where my one is, where someone's one is not, and then
You're always behind the beat, Amir. That's your thing. That's always your thing.
yeah.